So in a weekend where there's no shortage of phenomenal football, the game I want to start with is Oklahoma taking on Oklahoma State, because this game, aside from being a rivalry, aside from the implications, is going to have very interesting schematic matchups that we need to talk about and break down. Before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. So hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe that the Sooners are going to be able to show out and put away in-state rival Oklahoma State? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed this content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions, though they may seem small, are really massive to content creators such as myself in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's hop right into this. And first and foremost, the most interesting thing about this game to me is that on paper, this will be the best defense Oklahoma has played all season. And in fact, when we look, Oklahoma State is not allowing teams to score on them. They are tied for second in the nation in scoring defense with Texas A&M, only allowing an average of 14.91 points per game, which shows this is a stout defensive unit. Furthermore, if you wanted me to point to you one thing that I was really interested in what Oklahoma State's defense would be able to do in this game, it's affect the quarterback. Because when we look at the landscape of college football, Oklahoma State actually leads the nation in sacks and sacks per game, producing 3.87 sacks per game, and they're doing it from multiple positions. They have one defensive end with 6.5 sacks, another defensive end with 6 sacks, and a linebacker with 5 sacks. So they're very effective at generating these quarterback pressures, generating these sacks from multiple different positions. And the reason I bring that to your attention is because it shows they can get you off balance. And against a young quarterback especially, how Caleb Williams will be able to handle this is going to be a ton of fun to watch, because he has been really, really good so far this year and has played much above his age, but he's still young. He's still learning, which is a double-edged sword. It goes to point to how good he will be, but it's also the fact that he is still learning. It's going to be a learning process, and that's only natural with young quarterbacks. So when I'm looking at this matchup, I bring to you Oklahoma State's ability to affect the quarterback, because Oklahoma's offensive line has been up and down all year. And in fact, when we look at the transition from Spencer Rattler to Caleb Williams, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons that transition was made because of Spencer Rattler's lack of mobility. He didn't have the ability to get out in space and really affect a game in the way that you would ultimately like, whereas Caleb Williams is absolutely able to do so. And let's not make a mistake. Williams' mobility wasn't the fix, it was a band-aid, and it allowed the Oklahoma offensive line to have some pressure taken off of them, because if they got in a bad situation, they knew their quarterback would be able to bail and still make a play happen. But now when you're going into this game against a team that has been so effective at getting quarterbacks off their mark, that's where I'm really interested. And it is a good thing that Caleb Williams has the athleticism and has the mobility he does, because of what Oklahoma State is able to do in generating quarterback pressures. So that's my first really big key that I'm watching in this game, is the battle between Oklahoma State's defensive line and the Oklahoma Sooners offensive line, because the trenches is where everything is won and lost, and in this game in particular, it is going to be very unique. When I was going back and watching Oklahoma State games, one thing that stood out to me in particular was their performance against Iowa State, because against Iowa State, they flat out said, Breece Hall will not beat us. Brock Purdy is going to have to beat us. And in fairness, Brock Purdy showed up, and it was a great game. Iowa State ended up coming out with the win, but it was not easy, and nothing was given for free. And that is where I'm looking at this game. Is Oklahoma State going to come out and say, we are going to force the true freshman quarterback to beat us while we're making him uncomfortable? And if that's the case, this is going to be a really intriguing game to watch, because Caleb Williams will have to have a major performance. And the last point I'll make about the Oklahoma offense taking on the Oklahoma State defense is that Oklahoma's offense has got to have more consistency this week. Because last week, Oklahoma's defense came out and looked really solid and was actually the defense we'd expected all year. They played with a physicality and an edge to them that had not been present until that game. And that was amazing to see. The problem comes in where Oklahoma's defense was on the field much more than they should have been. If Oklahoma cannot stay on the field on offense, they're putting their defense in a bad situation no matter how good they're playing. because attrition will set in. And if your offense is going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and the other team can drive the football, your defense is getting tired. And the other team's offense, that's what they're built for, is grinding out your defense and controlling it. So Oklahoma's offense has got to stay on the field and give their defense breaks so that attrition doesn't set in, because the defensive performance we saw last week from the Sooners, that's the defense we need to see for the rest of the year. But now let's switch sides. Let's talk about Oklahoma's defense against Oklahoma State's offense. And Oklahoma State, though they have a phenomenal defense, they don't have the offense to go around with it. And in fact, Spencer Sanders has been the tale of two different quarterbacks. One play, he will make an unbelievable throw and read, and the next play you're kind of scratching your head because it didn't look like it even came from the same guy. Case in point, if you watch that Iowa State game against Oklahoma State, that touchdown to T. Martin, I believe in the fourth quarter, was unbelievable in his read and his throw, and the ability for the offensive line to give him enough time for that route to come open. But then in that same game, there were other throws where you're just sitting there scratching your head, and it doesn't seem like the same quarterback made both of those. However, at the end of the day, he is an athletic guy, and he has the ability to make big-time throws, and we've seen that before. Oklahoma has got to keep him uncomfortable. And the good news for Oklahoma is if they have to drop someone into spy, Nick Bonitto has been outstanding in that aspect. If we go back to Oklahoma against Nebraska, I thought he had a really solid game when they asked him to spy Martinez. It wasn't easy, but he was able to get the job done effectively enough anytime they asked him to spy. And that might be something we see out of Nick Bonitto this time. However, I also wouldn't be surprised if they looked at Bonitto saying, "You're our best edge rusher, and we have got to get this quarterback uncomfortable," and told him go. At the end of the day, though, you have got to stay gap disciplined because of Sanders' mobility. And if we look at the Oklahoma State offense, he's actually their second leader in rushing yards and rushing attempts behind Warren. So that tells you they are not going to be afraid to use his mobility, and because of that use of mobility, gap discipline must be maintained. The one area I'm really looking for Oklahoma's defense to affect Oklahoma State is up front, because if they can start affecting Oklahoma State's offense from the front, it will alleviate pressure off the secondary, because OU's secondary has been plagued by injuries, but they have been a bit picked on, and they currently rank as the 109th best passing defense in the nation, going up against an offense that may not put up huge numbers in the passing game, in fact, very rarely does, but against a wide receiver who is as capable as any wide receiver in the nation in T. Martin. And you do not want to let him get loose because he's got that kind of ability. So when I'm looking at this game, both defenses are going to need a stellar performance. For Oklahoma, if the defense shows up the way it did last week, I am really excited to watch it play because that was the Oklahoma defense I'd been waiting for all year long. For Oklahoma State, are you going to be able to try and keep Oklahoma's offense off the field enough to really get where you want to go? This game has massive implications, not only for the Big 12, but there is still a possibility at a playoff berth after this game because of the other games going on around the nation. When you look at Ohio State taking on Michigan, Alabama taking on Auburn, and then the conference championships that will happen there and after. This game has massive implications, and it is the biggest game the Oklahoma Sooners have played this year by a long shot. And that's awesome to see, that not only does it come in their last regular season game of the year, it comes against their in-state rival, in a rivalry that we're not sure how long it will be around with Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC. And because of that, I'm very interested in hearing from y'all. So hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.